Great. Let me just make sure I can advance. And yeah, great. Well, first, I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much, Jackie, for putting this together. And I feel great to be part of this group. I mean, Kara and George, your insights into the access and availability of water with First Peoples, and Hayes and Donna and Jim, the perspective from sort of the science as well as the regulatory aspect, and then Roxanne was really inspirational as well. And I look forward to hearing Kathleen and of course Judith later on. Um, I I've got a lot of images. I'm going to break the one slide per minute rule, but I'm fairly discursive. I'm a storyteller as an artist. And so I will tell my story with some of these images about a project that evolved. And imagine it as sort of a really short, really slow stop motion movie. So, feel free to toss any questions into the mix as you see fit. A couple of things happened in 2015 that were really inspirational to me. I've been doing what's called socially engaged art, or art and social practice, as my type of sculpture for years, but Pablo Helguera published a book on it that I was able to adopt for my classes and my teaching. And another thing that sort of coincided with that was Miami really started getting interested in promoting service learning in addition to experiential learning, and then created a series of service learning courses that it extended further back, but had not had sort of the purchase that they had starting about 2015, 2014, et cetera. When this came about, I wanted to be designated I wanted my classes to be designated as service learning, but I wasn't sure exactly how to go about it. This is what evolved, and I never planned it. It happened, and that's the way it is oftentimes in socially engaged art. We had 3 parts to a project, and it involved 2 different classes, starting in the spring of 2015 and then the fall of 2016. First, we needed to research local need. I mean, you can't do service learning unless you really understand the recipient. And service learning differs from experiential learning in that while both bring the experience outside of the classroom or art studio, in my case, service learning doesn't necessarily do greater good to the community experiential learning doesn't necessarily do greater good to the community while service learning does. So we went through this 3-part evolution, but we kind of made it up as it happened, because once again, you got to respond. So let me set my timer. I'll try to keep on track. So part 1 was really reaching out to figure out what the community needed. And a good friend who was on the city council put me in touch with Sabrina Jewell, who is the director of Oxford Seniors, a board member of PFLAG, and a local activist and part of an organization called PUSH, People United for Self-Help. And we sat down, I had coffee, and she said, one of the biggest things is people who are economically challenged. We have 3 main areas in town where they live. There's a mobile home park south of town, around a lake. There's one kind of around Walmart, and then there's the Section 8 housing, Parkview Arms, sort of behind the cemetery on Locust. And one of the biggest challenges is water. And I was like, what are you talking about? Everybody has water. It's like, it's not as easy as that. People that are living in a mobile home are suspended off the ground, and the pipes are exposed. And this was an eye-opener to me, because I've only lived in a mobile home for a short amount of time, and I didn't have any water issues. But part 1, we researched the local need with Sabrina, and identified some resources for that. And I brought this to my class, my beginning sculpture class. They had not had a class with me before. They weren't necessarily dedicated. They thought perhaps they were going to be carving naked bodies out of alabaster, but we don't really do that so much. So here's a kind of an aerial view of the Miami Mobile Home Park that is outside. It's behind the Family Resource Center. That's College Corner Pike on the right. That's the train track on the left that heads up to College Corner and down through town. It's been around for many years. What you might know or maybe don't know about trailers is they are suspended. They're basically built on steel girders, I-beams. And while they're called mobile homes, they're hardly that. They often are planted on cinder blocks. And so they're not really on wheels the way an RV would be. And so there's a space between the floor and the ground. The ground is a great insulator for keeping the pipes really, from freezing. However, that space is the issue. And what is often put in there to sort of insulate is skirting. And that's this vinyl product you see on the right, full of holes, because well-intentioned people who live in mobile homes will often use a string trimmer to trim around their mobile homes. And that string slaps into this vinyl that has been degraded by UV sunlight and breaks up. And next thing you know, it comes down, and next thing you know, there are animals living in there. They're living in the insulation and the undercarriage of the trailer. And then the pipes are now exposed for the wind that whistles through to burst them. And so this is sort of the undercarriage of a mobile home. You can see the cinder blocks. This is the white PVC, that's sewage pipe that's coming down out of a toilet. And on the right, this is what happens to a copper pipe then that has too much water in it, and that doesn't have too much. The water expands when it freezes and it bursts, leaving the resident not only without hot water, but without any water. So in identifying our local resources, we leaned on Push, and my students worked with me to create an application for aid. And Push will give up to $3,000 of resources to anyone in the Talawanda School District who needs it and who applies. So we changed the application a little bit, and my students created this application that basically assess, where people live, what kind of materials they need. Do they need heat tape? Do they need window insulation? Do they need a new furnace, et cetera? So that was step one, with the idea of getting this to the people that need it. So again, hardly carving naked people out of marble. We identified another resource, which was, we have to have money. So they wrote grants to get a large sum from Oxford Community Foundation, as well as the United Way, so that we could eventually put it towards winterization of some of these mobile homes. We had to learn about this because we're not tradespeople. So we had some people from Push. This is Don, who came in and showed us basically how to insulate pipes. And we created kind of a mock-up underside of a mobile home for this, and clamped some pipes together and learned how to protect them from freezing. But the big event for this first phase was we had an event in which we cooked food, and we hosted people at the Family Resource Center. We helped them fill out the applications, and we drove a van through the mobile home community, inviting them to come on over for free chili and waffles and all the stuff we're making, but also to be able to apply for some of this aid. So part two was, what are we going to do with these applications? Well, we had to go out and make a physical assessment. So this is Scott. He's an architect. He was also on the Push board, and he was able to go with me to visit each residence to see what the need is. Like, how much skirting do you need? How much pipe insulation? How many pipes do you have coming down? All the, the granular specifics that are so critical. Now, this is a poignant photo because the situation for so many of these people in this trailer park is dire. For instance, this woman, shortly after we spoke to her and took this photo, was killed. She's no longer with us. She was murdered. And so it was just, in sculpture, in art, in academia, you don't often face such dire circumstances, but it put my students and myself into a very deep connection with people who really needed it. Part two also involved letting them know that we're going to come out and do something. So some of my students were able to make this graphic design door tag, kind of like do not disturb, but instead, here's our measuring day and here's our installation day for skirting. Let us know if you want to participate, and we'd love to have your help. So this is some of the skirting that we were kind of having to tear off and replace. There's Scott going deep underneath the underside of a trailer there, to just kind of assess what we needed to do. That was on the measuring day. The students back at the studio, we created a large map to better understand sort of the socioeconomic divisions within the geography of Oxford. So this is Oxford as projected and then mapped directly on the wall with notes that all the students were taking. We used a text. In addition to the socially engaged art handbook by Helguera, we read excerpts from Bridges Out of Poverty that really taught us the difference between generational versus situational poverty, or economic disparity, exploitation. And then we learned how to skirt. In the studio, again, we built mock-ups. We learned how to patch skirting with pop rivets. We made sculpture out of the same material. Here, one of my students, Daniel, is using a heat gun to shape the vinyl skirting into what was eventually going to be a turtle. We really got to know the material well. We created art about our response to this. Here's a critique. This is what you often have in at the end of a project. So this was some sculpture. These are two loaves of, or a loaf of bread that is divided on handmade pedestals with string attaching them. And this is the class giving it criticism. Eventually, we took the money that we had earned by writing grants, and we bought siding. So this is the pickup of the trailer load of siding that we took to the mobile home park for our skirting day. And this was the skirting day in action. So college students, sculpture students, actually, they're Miami students, right? I don't want to put too fine a point on it. Working with a few professionals and trades folks, going from trailer to trailer. And we were able to, from about 9 a.m. to about 5 p.m., skirt about 15 to 16, I think 16 trailers. I put this down because a lot of folks in the mobile home park have dogs. It's security. These dwellings are not very secure, so dogs provide security, but dogs poop. And so that was another one of the hazards we had to identify. So when we found poop, we'd put a sign over it that said poop. And that way I didn't get all those parents that are saying, what, you're taking my kids out of the studio and you're making them step in dog poop? So anyway, this was our way of identifying it before that happened. And this is the finished product. This is the skirting that we did in part 2. Part 3 evolved because we wanted to communicate about this. Again, it's evolution. We never planned any of this. Part 3 was to exhibit sculpture and create a month-long series of events. This is the Cage Gallery. We also created social gatherings here. So the first thing we did was we curated with all the sculpture that had been made. So this is a suitcase made by one of my students who was part of a divorced parent situation, and she would have her special suitcase that she would carry back and forth to the parents, and she was connecting to the residents in that way, but she made the suitcase out of the siding. This was an embroidered pillow that was, she had been embroidering over and over again. Here's my alarm, so I got to wrap up. Had embroidered terms of liberty and freedom over and over again onto a pillowcase. And this is a very small, very exquisite model of a trailer that was bedecked with glitter bit by bit. So a real tedious, almost jewelry-esque piece. So we showed the sculpture, but when you show sculpture, you often have an art opening. So we had an art opening and we had food. I cooked pancakes. That's what I do. And we had, we had an opening that celebrated our creation of this work. But after that, we turned the gallery into a meeting place. So it has all the stuff you need for a meeting. It has water, it has coffee maker. It's kind of Burning Man, but it still worked out because we were inviting social and other groups to come in and meet there, to be able to use this not just as a gallery for art, but a functional meeting space. So let's see, this is the CCA, College of Creative Arts News Events and Ideas Summit. So some of the meetings that were going on there. This is the Service Learning Designation Committee, of which I was part. And this is PUSH, People United for Self-Help. We had a few other groups that would come in. They would schedule time and use the meeting space. I would show up and make coffee and make sure that everything was comfortable. So this is another aerial view of the Miami Mobile Home Park. I can't say that in art, it's really difficult to say you're making a difference. What we can say is that we're bringing about conversations. And I like to think that the conversations that we had with my students and with the members of the residents in the mobile home park were eye-opening for both of us. But that was the reason behind the evolution. So that's, I think, my last image And thank you very much.
Thank you, Rod. I think that was that sounds like a fascinating project, and I love all the different ways that you and the students work together to prepare for it. And it's a nice reminder for those of us at the university and university adjacent that there is a lot of work going on here in the community, and there's always more that we could do as well in terms of this type of work. So